What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Bischoff and Brown. We're right here on the Detroit Lions podcast. He's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. We're back for episode 2 of the summer, episode 1 of the 2024 season. Officially, we have made it. It is NFL game week number 1. We're here. We're live. We're ready to go. I can't believe it's happening. But Scott, my man, long time no see. How the hell are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited about the string of football that we have over the next grouping of days. Last weekend was super cool. Football's back. It's great. We should have high expectations for things. How are you?
I'm good. Busy with football season, coaching and stuff like that at the high school level here in Michigan. But it's fun, man. We're having a lot of fun. Trying to build something special. So hopefully we can do that. But all attention on the Detroit Lions for the next 25, 30 minutes or so, and especially all season long. You guys, of course, can stay up to date on all of it by rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the Detroit Lions podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other podcast platforms. However you go about your business, be sure to look us up and do exactly what I'm asking you to do. Rate, review, and subscribe. Without those ratings, reviews, and subscriptions, we cannot do this. So as always, we appreciate it. But let's dive right in. Lions, Rams preview. Game number 1. We don't necessarily know what to expect for this game simply because who is playing and it's game 1 and you just don't know what to expect. I mean, we don't know if Matthew Stafford's going to get booed or cheered. We don't know if
we know. We know on that one.
Yeah. I mean, with Kelly Stafford and the kids won't be there, but that's okay. Look, I'm looking forward to this game just simply because of how electric it was in the playoff game and being there firsthand, now seeing it from just watching it on TV. And it's a regular season game, but we have maybe the best fans in all of football. And I think that's where I want to start is like the Lions officially have the edge now when they're at home. Like going to Ford Field, it's always been a pretty good atmosphere, but specifically now with the expectations and how the crowd is and how the team is built, it's going to be loud at times in this stadium on Sunday night. What are your expectations on that front as far as the stadium and how big of an impact can that play to the Rams, their offense, and specifically their defense?
I mean, I think it's a huge deal to have the kind of noise, that the Rams are going to have to deal with on offense.
Yeah.
And potentially, and we're going to talk about this a few times, I would imagine, but potentially missing a piece or two on their offensive line. Is Havenstein going to play? I'm not sure. Nobody really knows anything truthfully about the injury reports and how things really stand at this point. But the Lions fans and the noise that Stafford and the Rams offense is going to have to deal with, it's going to be a problem for them. It's an advantage for Detroit to play at home, prime time, in a loud environment. Stafford's already admitted that, the environment in the playoff game was just nuts. I don't know that it rattled him, but the way he worded it or the way he was talking about it, it seemed like it did. And I would expect that same or a similar vibe on Sunday night. Lions fans should be very, very excited about where they're at, and as this season begins, we should all be excited about it. They're in a great place.
Absolutely. And you mentioned injuries. I'm glad you did because I just pulled up the injury report that was released by the Lions today. Actually, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back and the tight end. We all know how talented they were as rookies. They were not on the injury report today, so that indicates they practice fully today, so we should see them ready to go. Both had been dealing with that hamstring injury this offseason, but they do have a couple of injuries defensively. Ifeatu Melifonwu and Lawrence Strickland, the safeties. Lawrence Strickland's kind of that borderline bubble 53-man roster guy, special teamer. Those guys are on the report. They've been limited in practice. As far as DJ Reader and I feed him Elefon, we don't know if Reader's going to play. Dan Campbell has really had a lot of optimism about DJ Reader playing, but we don't know. Strickland has not played at all, so that's or practiced at all, excuse me. So that's important to note because, he's a special teams kind of guy. Does he sit out? Can they put him on the IR? How is that all going to work out as far as the total of the 53-man roster? Because the Lions technically have 52 men on the roster right now. So we're expecting somebody to get called up, but we just don't know who that's going to be and how that's all.
Still on the 53? Not bad.
Josh
Kaminsky. Jeez.
Yes, he is, but he is put on the IR.
So is he counting on that? Is he counting against? I should know this. Is he counting against the 53?
I do not believe. I don't believe so.
Okay, I don't even know why I brought it up. It doesn't matter to the point that I was going to make, but I wouldn't expect to see a big dose of DJ Reader. If he does play, I would expect a very little bit from him. Melifonwu, as of like 2 weeks ago, the news was not necessarily great about his heel or whatever it was. I think it was his heel. It seems like he's sort of bounced back and is trending in probably a good direction for week 2, I hope. Yeah. But he might not be available in week 1. So, this is a challenge. That Stafford with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, it's a challenge. And the running game, Kyron Williams, he was incredible last year. But the Lions have added some premium talent in their secondary, and I am fascinated to see what. Now, again, tempering expectations kind of stuff, but fascinated to see what this secondary looks like with everything that's so new. Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold, and Amick Robertson. Ennis Rakestraw will see. I would imagine he'll see. He'll be involved in some way. But Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, what was a super weak part of their team last year has become, they've changed things around. They've added so many bodies, but some of them are like premium players. So really intrigued about what that's going to look like. But as far as the Reader thing, to me, it's if he does play, he might. How many snaps do you think he might take? 10?
10, maybe 15. If he got to 2022, I'd be a little surprised. I mean, he hasn't done anything this offseason other than run up that hill. So
yeah, I think they're just gonna, patiently kind of figure him out. Right. They need him in the long term, not necessarily for week 1, but
and I'm glad
injuries are okay. I think they're in a pretty good place.
Yeah, and the Rams have not put out an injury report yet, but Puka Nacua was dealing with a lower body injury throughout the preseason. He pretty much was shut down for most of August. So we'll obviously see. And I'll tell you what, the Rams, I know they can run the football with Kyron Williams, and they obviously have Blake Corum, and I know what Cooper Kupp does and Puka Nacua, but when you really get outside of that, the weapons just feel a little bit limited. Now, maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but they brought in Colby Parkinson. They have Davis Allen, Hunter Long. Like, these aren't really guys that are going to move the needle for me as far as pass catchers, specifically up the seam. And as we mentioned, I feed him Melifonwu. I think Brian Branch is going to step in just fine as a starting safety. Obviously, we know what we're going to get out of Kirby Joseph. I think either one of those guys can lock up any of those tight ends that they have. Branch can easily, if they run a lot of cover 3, they can invert, or even if they run their cover 1, they can invert Branch down. He can handle, maybe he handles Puka Nacua. Maybe he handles Tutu Atwell. We'll obviously see what happens as far as who that slot receiver is going to be. I think it's Demarcus Robinson, but
you never know. 3 of those guys.
It could be all 3 of them, but
I guess you mentioned Atwell. It could be any of the 4. Could be
right. But with how deep that secondary is, like you mentioned, I'm putting a lot of trust in Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold, Amick Robertson, Ennis Rakestraw. Those guys, I feel like, should be able to lock down most of those weapons. And now we're moving on to number 2, number 3, number 4. if we can shut down the number one option in the passing game, vast majority of the time, the Lions defense could be in for a big game, especially with the home field advantage and returning starters coming back. So we'll see. But obviously, we're all waiting patiently for what's going to happen with the Lions offense. What's that going to look like? Do they continue to step forward the way that they've been over the last 3 seasons, or do they step back at all? I mean, does Jared Goff, I'm not saying he's going to come back to earth, but at any point, does he come back to what he was in the last parts of his career with the Rams? Are we going to see that? Obviously, we don't know, but do you think we're going to see that at all? Is JMO going to let us down?
I don't know. It's a great question. It's going to be one of the things to pay attention to the most in the beginning part of this season, because if he gives you a little bit, this offense goes from a really, really good offense to an elite offense, probably one of the best offenses in the NFL if he takes a step, right? I don't know that I expect Goff to take a step back. Right. But I mean, there were moments last year where he looked uncomfortable. I don't know if you remember, but there were moments where it just seemed like, I don't know if he had like a thumb injury or whatever it was, but he was throwing lots of ducks where it just was like, that's a weird, that ball's just fluttering. It's just strange.
Right.
But they're at home. They have everything rolling. Same offensive coordinator, same staff, all of it. So I wouldn't expect necessarily Goff to take a step back. I'm curious to see what Gibbs looks like in year 2. Obviously, he was ridiculous in his first year, but the way he glides, the way he moves, he's fun to watch. It's good that he and Laporta are healthy, but I would also, the hamstring injuries tend to creep back. So this could be a game where maybe they go a little light with Gibbs. He's going to get his touches. He's going to get his catches and that kind of stuff. But Montgomery's a player that may give you, more in week 1. But overall, I think the offense should be pretty explosive and pretty electric. And I don't know how much you've seen of Jameson Williams in the summer, but to me, it looks like he's running routes a little differently than he had in the past. More technical and more refined. Mm-hmm. In the past, if he was running, let's say he was running a deeper route where he's trying to push the corner off of him, and then come back to the ball, there were times when he wouldn't come back for the ball.
Yeah.
Right? He's doing that, or at least what you're seeing in camp, he is coming back for the ball. He's running a little more detail-oriented routes. I'm sure Jared Goff loves that.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, like just going back to your Gibbs comment, he will get some of his touches. Does he get them all? I don't know. Does he get 13, 14 carries, 4 or 5 catches? I don't know. I don't think so. That's okay. Could be a heavy Montgomery day. It could be Vaki. I mean, he could be a guy, I think I'm saying his last name right. He could be a guy that really is. And
he was in the preseason. He was, I mean, I think he is running back 3. I think, very, very comfortably, you can put packages together to get him involved in the screen game, that kind of stuff where he's so difficult to get to the ground, but then explosive too. He's got a lot of wiggle and a lot of power in the way he runs. His contact balance is just silly.
Yeah. Well, and that's why that's why I feel so confident in just the decision of keeping 4 receivers. I don't know how you felt about that. I know some people were like, they need to add a 5th receiver. They need a true X receiver. And I know they got some guys on the practice squad like Allen Robinson. And I personally think Allen Robinson might get the call up before, Donovan Peoples-Jones and maybe even Tim Patrick, because Tim Patrick just can't stay healthy. But I like the additions that they added for their practice squad for those veteran guys that can come in about a month and really start helping out. But I think Isaiah Williams, I've been preaching it since undrafted free agent time. He's going to be something in this offense. He just is. Like, if you think of what Jared Goff does and you think back of just think back in history, Tom Brady, he wasn't a gunslinger. He wasn't throwing it 50, 60 yards down the field. He dinked and dunked and they could run the football. And that's what the Lions are. And I'm not saying Jared Goff is Tom Brady, but it's the same mentality. Yeah. And I think Isaiah Williams presents that. Wouldn't surprise me if he had 3 or 4 catches in this game. Like, it really wouldn't. Just simply because I kind of feel like the Lions are going to start airing it out a little bit more. They've been so run heavy, and they now have these pass catching options. And if J-Mo takes that step forward, I could see a scenario where Goff is throwing it 40, 45 times in this game. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I want them to run the football, but I could just see them having different packages to get those guys open, like Laporta and all that stuff, and they're just going to be able to throw it.
If Goff's got to throw it 40 times, it's a high scoring game, right? And that's something that I hope does not happen. I really want to see the secondary give the defensive line time to get home. You know what I mean? Like there are multiple ways to get that, to play that game. Either you get to the quarterback quickly and you get pressure and sacks, or there's just nobody open and it gives them, a quarter of a sack, whatever it is, to get home. And I hope that's what we see at times. Pressure on Stafford. I want to, it'd be great to see Hutchinson have a really big game.
And they need him to start. They need him to start fast. Not wait 5 or 6 weeks to get that first sack. And we're seeing, we love seeing the pressures, and all that is important. But seeing him get home is important. And that's the other thing. Like, how much do the Rams defensive linemen get home this week? There is no Aaron Donald clogging the middle now. You know, how much trust do they have in Kobe Turner or Braden Fisk or, obviously Jared Verse? Like, there's some talent there. I like what they did with their defensive line.
I do, but they're young. So it's like,
they're young, and the Lions have the best, to me, the best offensive line. I know to you, the best offensive line in football. So maybe they do run the football very well, but I think that's kind of the reverse mindset of like, everybody's, I think, expecting them to run the football well against that young, inexperienced defensive line, and they very well could. They could run it for 250 yards, but that's why I just think maybe we see a little bit more pass-heavy offense from the Lions week one, simply so maybe they get out a lead faster. They get out in front of this thing. Because Stafford starts slow. No matter what, he's going to start slow. I would be surprised if the Rams went down on their opening drive and scored. It's just not the way Matt Stafford is.
You mentioned Isaiah Williams. There were multiple times in the preseason where I got up out of my chair because of something he had done. He very much looks the part. It's crazy because it's like, how does this guy not get drafted? Because you watch him, in school, in college, and it's like, that's there. Maybe it's his size. He could have had I'm just being completely speculative. There could have been injuries in his past, which then furthered the size issue, right? But he's tough to cover. He just is, right? So, I think they have enough weapons. I really wanted them to go after Noah Brown. That's the player I wanted. I understand what they've done by not really involving themselves in a receiver that you have to deal with going forward into the future. You just want one of those guys, whether it's Patrick or Robinson or whoever it is. You just want one of those guys to step up and become the, I don't want to say a Josh Reynolds replacement, but that's kind of what you're looking for. And, that's why I thought a player like Noah Brown would have been kind of a perfect fit for just replacing Josh Reynolds. But it's a really good point you bring up about Vaki. Maybe throwing the ball to the running backs a little more. I would love for them to do that because it's not something they did. It wasn't like a priority of their offense last year,
right?
In screen game. So, I'm fascinated to see what their offense looks like. I've said that word a couple times, I guess. I'm really excited for this game.
I know.
We should all be, though. They're in a great place. They really are. Offensively, defensively. Just think about 4 years ago what this team was. 3 years ago, and as this team transitioned from Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia to Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, and look where you are in a few short years. You're, everywhere you look, they're either the number one team in the NFC or the number two team in the NFC. And it's like, whoa, it's awesome. It's just great.
Yeah.
So it's a great, this is going to be a great way to start the season. Obviously it's showtime on Sunday Night Football, primetime football at home. It doesn't get better.
No, great. It doesn't. It does not. And let's be honest, Dan Campbell's going to have these guys ready to go. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, you can't expect anything otherwise. He got them ready for the playoffs. They had a great push, had them ready to go in the regular season and win the amount of games that they did. And in the second half, season turnaround that they had the season before, like they have been trending in such a good direction that it's hard to imagine them going backwards here. So I really hope they step forward and continue to do that. I hope they come out and win this thing 35-17. I mean, I'm not going to give a score prediction or anything like that. I'm not jinxing it like we did last year at times, but
yeah.
If you're new to
thinking about things the way you're thinking, I am a little bit,
no, I mean, I've grown to just accept the way that I'm feeling now because of how last year went, and then just all off season. I mean, we've heard it from the national media, the expectation of winning the division again, winning the Super Bowl, making it back to the NFC title game. I mean, I've seen predictions where they've got the Lions beating the Jets, which I don't think the Jets will make it, but you never know, or the Jets beating the Lions. I see predictions where the Rams beat the Lions in the NFC Championship game. I could see that happening. The Lions get the early season win now, and then they meet again down the road. You never know.
But just think about how good the Lions were last year, right? They were in the NFC Championship game. And all credit to the 49ers. They deserved to win the game. They played it. They played, the best 60 minutes. But without a couple of really fluky, weird things, the Lions are in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
they are. And it's, as nuts as it is to think about that team improved pretty significantly in the offseason. And credit to Brad Holmes and company, because they did. They took a pretty floundering secondary and have added, enough veteran presence with the trade that you make for the starting corner, but also some moxie, right? Some attitude with Terry and Arnold and Rakestraw, and Amick Robertson brings that too. So you've already got that. You've got Branch, who does what he does, and he's just a phenomenal player. And Kirby Joseph has all the swagger in the world. He's not lacking anything in that department. So
right.
You flip. You go from a secondary with Cam Sutton, who's given up, who they just asked to lock up number ones, and he just was getting torched. But it was okay because they were good enough elsewhere to survive that. I don't necessarily see that in their future. I think their secondary is now, I don't want to say it's a strength of their defense, but it certainly could be in 2 years,
right,
when Arnold and Rakestraw have emerged and they're legit, and you've got all this stuff going on. I think just looking at a team that was in the NFC title game that probably without a couple of fluky things goes further, getting, I would say, significantly better. Maybe that's overstating it, but I don't feel like it is. I think they have gotten significantly better. So I don't know what are your expectations, big picture or long term for this team? Maybe we'll end up there.
No, I think that's a great question. I think it's a great place to end it too, because it is really hard to predict what we're going to see because we just haven't seen enough yet. We haven't seen enough from the starters this summer to really get a gauge of what this offense or defense is truly going to look like. But I trust that it's going to look like one cohesive unit on Sunday night. Sure, there's going to be things that they have to fix. They'll fix them all year long. That never ends for a coach. But really my season-long expectations is that Jameson Williams plays enough to where he's healthy, and he plays long enough this season to where we see him probably play every single game. And I think there's a substantial increase in just production for him. And we talked about it in our first episode back earlier in August of just like what the expectations for him would be. And I think getting close to 1,000 yards and 7 or 8 total touchdowns is very much possible for him. I'm not going to put a number as far as catches, but I think he will be a big factor of this offense. It just feels like it. I don't feel like the Lions are blowing smoke there. The players, the same thing. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of good things coming for Jameson Williams this season. And then just defensively, offensively, offensive line's got to stay healthy, but really defensively, my focus will be on the continuous growth and health of Brian Branch, He feels like just a stud superstar leader of this defense, similar to like when you look back at the Seahawks defense and Richard Sherman and all that. They had those young defensive players that eventually took the team over. The Lions could be faced with that in the near future with Brian Branch and Tyrion Arnold and Aiden Hutchinson and Kirby Joseph and those players. It just feels kind of like they've got their own little legion here that's brewing, and we don't know what we're going to call them yet, but I'm excited for that, and I can't wait to see how that looks all season. What about you?
Same stuff. Like, I was kind of hoping to pin you into they're going to be in the Super Bowl, but you want a season like wins?
Well,
it's no, not necessarily. I mean, I think you worded it great. There's going to be moments where their offense is phenomenal and looks like the strength of their team. There's going to be moments where their defense does things that we think, yeah, this is so much better than it was a year ago. Big picture, it's tough to get to the Super Bowl, but the Lions are one of the best teams in the NFL, period. End of story. So to me, there's nothing wrong with talking openly about aspirations of winning it all. And yes, you have to go week by week, and you've got to, you have to play every game, right? Every team in the NFL can beat somebody in the NFL. They can't. But Campbell's a good coach. They're detailed. They know what they're doing. Holmes has done an incredible job of turning this thing around as quickly as he has. And at this point in time, we'll see how it ends up, right? But I don't think there's anything off the table for them, period. And everything's available to them, which is strange. But
I completely agree. I truly cannot wait. I will tell the people this. My bet on Sunday night, straight bet, will be the Lions minus 3.5. I think that they can win by 4 points or more. If they do win, I think it is by 4 points or more. So I'm fine with the 3.5. If you're going to parlay it, maybe take that spread with David Montgomery scoring a touchdown. Maybe even Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is plus 105 to score. So maybe you kind of dabble into that, and we'll
maybe
do
they each
more.
Huh? Maybe they each get one.
It's very possible. I mean, when you look at what Jahmyr Gibbs did in the second half of the season and really throughout all of last season, I think he scored in every single game but 4 or 5 games. So he was money when it came to scoring, and maybe I'm mixing him up with David Montgomery. One of the two had that stat. I'm pretty sure it was Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah. So I'm gonna leave it there. But you got anything else for me?
No, we're good. This is just this is week 1. We'll obviously get more detailed as we go along. But great to be back. Hope everybody had a great summer, but it's football time.
It's football season. I don't care about summer anymore. I care strictly about this. So that's what we're going to do. You guys, like I said, can rate, review, and subscribe to the show at Detroit Lions Podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the whole 9. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter or X at Russ NFL Draft, at Bischoff_Scott. He's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. This is Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions Podcast. We'll see you guys next week.